to the Numbers Game, the show where analytics meets the action and data drives the decisions. I'm Cynthia Frelund, and we've officially turned the page to draft season. Of course, we'll cover numbers for some major events in other sports between now and the beginning of the next NFL season, but the Combine starts on Thursday, that's February 27th, which means it's officially mock draft season. My mock draft 1.0, which means my first mock draft, is available on NFL.com. It's NFL.com/Frelund. It'll get you there. And of course, I've done it a little differently than other people. My mocks have two key distinctions from other people's. One, no trades allowed. And two, an eye on free agency, which maximizes the combined impact of the potential draft pick with the available free agents with respect to wins in the 2025 season. The fact that the salary cap is going to go up to over $270 million, we'll get the final number soon, is ridiculous. And it helps drive the fact that this exercise isn't about rumors pairing players to teams, but rather about off-season team building strategy through the lens of holistic, contextualized data. You got all that? Okay, great. If not, don't worry about it. I've recruited help for this episode so we can get to all of the important parts from a quant perspective, but also bring in one of the best in the industry when it comes to factoring in how the qualitative and quantitative best support each other. Before he joins us, you should know that Bill is a very important cog in the NFL ecosystem, not just at the NFL Network, but for how we all consume NFL games. He's incredibly humble, and he's going to roll his eyes so hard at this intro, so I'm doing it before he gets here. Bill Smith is the Director of Research and Analytics, including all things next-gen stats. Almost every broadcast you watch, like even when it's on Fox or other networks, is shaped by his team's work, helping to tell the important pregame, in-game, and post-game next-gen stats information we've all come to expect and, of course, love at this point. When you see that green next-gen stats logo, think Bill. And if you have NFL Pro, you get it already. That is a great product. Also, if you were to ask anyone at the NFL, including all of your favorite former players who work here and other places, Tom Brady, Greg Wilson, they're going to say the same thing that I would say. Bill is freaking awesome, and he's the perfect secret weapon, which means it is the perfect time to have him help us uncover the numbers that make the difference ahead of the Combine, because it's not just about what happens, it's about why it happens and how the data helps tell the story. Bill Smith, thank you so much for hanging out. I wanted to bring you on this week because it's the perfect time to talk about what the Combine really is and how we can start to talk about which player will end up where in the draft. And of course, I think this is one of the most interesting free agency periods maybe we've ever seen. So let's just, I think that the viewer needs to know your favorite. How many years have you been going to the Combine again?
I think this is Combine 13 for me, which is crazy. Just another week in Indianapolis in the winter. Just it is what it is. Let's go. Let's walk everywhere outside in the cold.
I mean, you can go in those the tunnel things are good. So what do you think in 13 seasons, you can say accurately, what is the biggest value of a Combine for teams from your perspective?
So we, as the media who covers it, don't get to see the two things that are probably the most valuable, which, as you know, are the medicals and the interviews. But you can tell a lot on the field by how these guys work out. You can tell a lot about how they carry themselves. You can tell a little bit about who's a leader amongst the groups. And then really you just want to have the check the box exercise that people are verifying what our analysts such as yourself and Daniel Jeremiah, Mike Mayock are seeing on tape. This guy looks like he runs in the 4.4s. Check, he runs in the 4.4s. So if you think someone plays like they run in the 4.4s and then they maybe test in the 4.6s, then you got to go back and look at it and see okay, does this guy just play faster? Maybe is the level of competition, if he's at a smaller school or something, making him look like he's a little faster on tape than maybe he would at the next level. So it's really just going through and confirming all the things we've seen on tape. And then anytime you can also get players and prospects in the same environment to do the same thing, there's also added benefit in that.
Yeah, I think the ritual of it is also part of it, especially now that these guys are making millions of dollars before even setting foot in the NFL, going through the procedure. They always talk about are you nice to the person at the hotel, et cetera? Do you get along with the other guys? Obviously, we don't get interviews, we don't get medical, but we do see a lot, and you can tell a lot about characters. And I know you've worked with a bunch of characters. What is your best Combine moment? Not necessarily, we've all seen some 40s that have been run by some people. I mean, more your specific one.
So I'll do one on field and then one off field, which is just kind of fun. On the field, my second combine, it was the first time we called it from the booth like a game. So I was fortunate enough to be able to sit right there next to Rich Eisen and Mike Mayock as it was happening. But in 2013, ending up not being one of like the better draft classes of all time, we may say. But 9 o'clock in the morning, first day, it was either OL1 or OL2, steps up is Teron Armstead and runs, I think, like 4.79. And it was like, here's all of a sudden, like, everyone's like sleepy. We're just trying to get on the air. And like the second dude at like 3:30 runs 4.79. And it's like, from the perspective we had, like sitting at midfield, like watching him run right there, it was like, oh my gosh, like that dude is flying. And look, he Arkansas Pine Bluff, like small HBCU school, ends up going in the third round, has a very long and productive career, like very, very good player. So like that was just, again, like my first time in the booth for it and seeing it. And it was like, oh my gosh, like these guys are so much faster in person, generally speaking, than what comes across on TV. But just seeing that was really, really cool. And then in the past, the combine used to also dovetail with Oscars weekend. So Steve Mariucci Mooch would always like host an Oscars party on Sunday night when the combine was Friday through Monday. So everyone would like fill out a ballot and like try to pick who was going to win the awards. And like, not being a movie buff myself, like I would just like, fill out, the only movies I'd heard of for the year and then go through. But like everyone would gather and like watch the show that night and have like food and drink. And like that was always super fun when those two events lined up.
I love that. I love anything to do with Mooch. He's the best. We all agree that he's just wonderful. But okay, so you have my mock draft. You would get all this stuff. This is a little peek behind the scenes, anyways, because this is how it works. I'll do something, and then Bill will make it 1,000% better. So you haven't had a chance to make my mock 1,000% better yet. This is just what's been written so far. It's only mock draft number 1. So we'll use that as a jumping off point, and then you can make it a ton better. But we need to start where every draft probably should start, which is with the quarterback position. This is considered a down draft. There's not a ton of guys. Like last year, there were, you were either a Jaden Daniels flavor. You were, it was 1A, 1B for many people. And that's the way it's been for a couple of drafts now. What are your perceptions of this year's quarterback class?
I think general consensus, and we'll see if you agree, is that it's a little bit weaker, as you said. I think the biggest thing about it being weaker is just in quantity, not even as much as quality. Like last year was such an outlier, having 6 guys go in the top 12. Obviously, JJ McCarthy didn't play with the knee injury, but the other 5 guys, like no one really had a Blaine Gabbert rookie year where you look at it and say like, oh, like that guy can't play. Like we got to go and maybe get something else. Like all 5 guys like showed flashes, showed promise. And that's just, for 6 to go in the top 12 is crazy. So I think that to me is really where it stands out. Like it seems like we have Cam and Shadur and Cam at the top, and then probably not another guy in the first round, maybe not even in the top of the second round. And it becomes like, who's your flavor and what you like between the rest of the guys for QB3. So I think that's kind of where it stands out the most. And it'll be interesting, I think, to see like how that plays out in free agency, as there are a number of teams that probably need a starting quarterback. That number is probably more than 2 is, I guess, how I'll say it. So like, will we see some crazy moves because teams don't think they'll be able to land their starter in the draft?
Yeah. So the way that my model shakes out so far is that Cam Ward is my consensus number 1 quarterback. It's not by a significant margin. If you were to put him in last year's class, he would be number 5. So that's just the sheer rankings of last year versus this year. But again, last year was a historically relevant quarterback season. So, and in JJ McCarthy, we don't even know what he is yet, but he would have ranked 5 at this point. Interesting. Shador Sanders, for me, he would rank maybe 8 if it were last year's draft. I could go back in several more years and see, but I don't know if that's even worth it. The thing for him is that the upside is absolutely there, but so is the downside. There's just incomplete resume work. Now we've seen quarterbacks who absolutely need to throw on the run. That seems to be something that, especially if you're getting drafted quite highly, you need to be able to move your feet because you're not likely going to be standing behind a really good O-line. That's I mean, is as simple as that. And I don't have enough proof that he can. It doesn't mean that he can't. It just means that their resume is a little bit incomplete. Next Gen Stats shows that I think we use 8 miles an hour, right? That's in the league
for
what
on
we
the
use.
run.
I dropped it down to 6 just for college sake, which is a 10-minute mile. Not a bad pace, but they just haven't done it as often, these two, compared to years past. Jaden Daniels did it like a lot of the time last season, ahead of last season when he was still at LSU. So it's just a bit more incomplete, which just means more volatility, which just means more uncertainty for me. So it's, again, the volume, you're totally right. There, guy number Jackson Dart, right? We talked about him a lot coming out of the Senior Bowl. He had a really nice Senior Bowl. He really is he's a pocket passer. I don't. That's not to say he can't throw on the run. He just hasn't. So that would be something where several seasons ago he would be ranked quite differently for me than he would be now, given that the things that tend to predict for success, especially we see these next gen stats notes on expected rushing values, right? For a quarterback to run, it's 6 yards. For a running back, it's 4.2. So that just shows you right there, it's just more difficult to defend. So that's, again, more incomplete resumes as opposed to, anything that's like, we don't even know who, you said it yourself,
Exactly.
quarterback number 3, who's that even going to be?
I know. I mean, in both the top two guys like started in FCS. Like Cam Ward's a 5-year player, so like again, he's a little older, so the teams knock him on value a little bit based on that. Like,
But then
Shadur's
look at
used to
Bo
not
Nix.
playing.
Bo Nix
Exactly.
was like played the most snaps in college football ever. He was like 45, I think, when he was drafted last year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm
So
pretty sure that it turned out
how
okay for
teams
him.
yeah, it's like different teams value it different ways. Like Shadur's used to not playing in front of a good offensive line. Like Shadur may not have, they tried to get the ball out quickly rather than have him scramble, but like he's also shown that like he's one tough dude because like he took a bunch of hits in the last couple of years at Colorado and always got up, always kept going, and continued to really play well.
There's no doubt he's a winner, right? Like my thing is for him, and I told him this to his face, is it's less about that I don't think he can, and more that it'd be impossible to put together a true analysis of his resume with data and include things that so he played with a battle line. He played there's some things there. Justin Herbert had some of those same metrics as well, and he kind of has some interesting data now. So it just becomes more volatile. It's not fair necessarily, but there's no doubt he's tough. Yes, tough for sure. Does that translate to a winning quarterback at the NFL level? Tennessee is on the clock as we speak, as of right now. They need a quarterback, presumably, right? We think. We've heard a lot of, let's talk about this quarterback class with respect to the free agents available. We just read some news that Matthew Stafford's agent is now able to go seek a little bit of information about what is the market for him in this potential free agency period. We know that there's going to be a Sam Darnold situation. There's tons of quarterbacks out there. Like, if you're Tennessee, what is your strategy right now, knowing that they're probably not one quarterback away from the Super Bowl? I don't think.
Yeah, I think that's the best point to make is like if they got a quarterback and plugged him in, this isn't where the Bears thought they were last year. This isn't even where the Commanders thought they were last year. And I don't know that people really thought the Commanders were there. But if you look at their offense, like how many blue chip players do the Titans have on offense? Like probably zero. Like how many red chip players do the Titans have on offense? Like depends on how much you like Skoronski and Latham over the past 2 years on the O line. Like Calvin Ridley, like maybe. So it's like they don't really have the roster construction right now to drop the quarterback in and to go ahead and make the playoffs, contend, and look to make a run. So from where I would sit, like we've sort of had this conversation a lot with or on the network, yourself, like DJ, whoever, like, do you want to build the team and then drop the quarterback in, or do you want to like take the quarterback and then figure the rest of it out? I think if you have a generational quarterback, if you have what people thought of Caleb Williams and of Jaden Daniels last year, like then you take the quarterback. But with these guys, have you said Cam Ward would be your 5th quarterback in last year's class? Like at that point, I'm a proponent of take the best player available, build up the roster as much as you can, and then try to drop the quarterback in and really take advantage of the rookie wage scale, because then you have really 5 years of controlled value. Six, even one franchise tag isn't that, you know, doesn't ding you that much from the salary perspective, especially as the cap continues to grow. So I would probably just take the best player available and not try to force a quarterback. Will Levis is still a young player, 2 years in the league, not 2 full years starting. Like, I don't think it's the worst idea to run him out as the week one starter and see if you can continue to get him more reps and continue to build and grow with him, understanding that, like, they could go a number of different directions, and that's not the end all be all right now. But I also don't think it's the worst idea that they could proceed with in year two under Brian Callahan and year one with a new GM.
Yeah, I mean, a new GM who comes over from a Kansas City model where, in much of Kansas City's success, especially, when it comes to the post paying Patrick Mahomes era, has been a lot about leveraging Patrick Mahomes and the fact that this year specifically, he stayed very healthy. So it's hard. You can't replicate, there's no Mahomes in this draft. And, we obviously people were drafted ahead of him in that draft. However, I don't think you're starting with a situation where you have that's not out there. You're right. Like the Caleb Williams, I'm not willing to say, I don't know what I think about Caleb Williams. I don't even know what I think about Jaden Daniels technically yet. It's a good season. It's a great start, but you got to give me a little bit more longevity before I'm willing to say that. But
that sounds like a little Lions hater coming there, that you're not sure on what you have with Jaden Daniels yet. Like, seems like a little PTSD. Jaden Daniels was awesome this year, and like, you at least have to feel great if you're Washington.
100%. My asterisk there is because I want to give this, I have to measure everyone with the same measuring stick. So if I'm going to say that I don't know who someone is like a Caleb Williams yet, because I still have a lot of faith in him, it also has to be true that I don't fully formed know who, because last year CJ Stroud looked amazing. Then he had a little bit of regression. And, so my point is it gives everyone fairness if you just give them a little bit longer. And if you're a Washington Commanders fan, you should feel so happy. And you're like, fine, great. It's a great start. It'll be even better, with a little bit of help, maybe at the O-line or whatever it is that they choose to do. But again, I just feel like it's unfair to say I know who Jaden Daniels is before, and because then wouldn't I know who Caleb Williams is too? Then by that same, they played 1, 2 games, 3 games different. Again, just saying, have to be fair.
Once you've done it once, like Jaden Daniels has gotten to, a championship game. Like, it took Lamar Jackson a long time to get to a conference championship game. And I know that's not how all these guys should be labeled. Justin Herbert hasn't gotten there yet. There's a lot of guys that haven't gotten there yet. So it's like, he does have that like box tick that he can do it and he can perform in those places.
Agreed.
But again, just because you get there once doesn't mean you get back there again.
But speaking of some Lions hate, I seem to remember a Bears team that made it to a Super Bowl with an interesting quarterback situation. Just saying. We can't all have Joe Burrow as our quarterback, okay? Bengals fan, got it.
I know. We're trying to get back there. We'll get to that, I'm sure, later on in this episode.
We will, for sure. Okay, so let's just go through it. Let's do this quarterback situation, and let's do it with, just to remind everyone, Titans, Browns, Giants. You could argue all three need quarterbacks. Those are 1, 2, and 3. That, as of right now, no one has traded yet. And then the Raiders sit at number 6. The Jets are number 7. That's just the first 7. And we already have 5 teams that could potentially look at a quarterback if everyone were to draft the way that they're supposed to draft in the position they're supposed to be drafting right now. So let's play this pairing game. Give me 2 pairs. I don't care if you take a free agent and pair them with the team that needs a quarterback. I don't care if it's these first 5. Like, let's just start to draw some lines in the sand of some good fits for quarterbacks so that we can get some wins and make some people happy with some quarterback needing teams.
Absolutely. I think the first one that just makes a lot of sense is Kirk Cousins somehow getting to the Browns. So that would take one of those 5 quarterback needy teams off the board. I just think it makes so much sense from what Stefanski wants to run from an offensive perspective and from the relative value that the Browns would be able to pay him. So if he gets cut, obviously we have like a Russell Wilson-esque situation with Pittsburgh last year where Cleveland's paying him essentially the minimum, which works very well for Cleveland with the current quarterback contract they have on their books. Now, again, all this assumes Deshaun Watson isn't ready to be back coming off the injury. It assumes
Second,
that the Browns want. Excuse me.
second injury in a row, like two in 2
Yeah,
years.
I know. Did like retore the Achilles. So like it's awful. Like you don't want to see that happen to anybody. But the Browns still have to start someone at quarterback in week one. And just from a schematic fit, like we've already seen Kirk Cousins play with Kevin Stefanski. Stefanski was his OC in 2019 in Minnesota. Cousins, threw 26 touchdowns with just 6 interceptions in what was one of his best seasons. All this assumes Cousins in year two, coming off his own Achilles, can come back and move a little bit better than he did with Atlanta. But just the fact that Atlanta swung and missed so badly on that contract and has already moved on and have Michael Penix penciled in, like him being available just makes so much sense with Stefanski there in Cleveland. I think that's probably the route that they would try to go or should try to go.
I would argue that it's a better situation for any quarterback starting this next season. One, O-line probably healthier. They were not healthy for the most of last season. Not all, but most of last season. Nick Chubb probably back. So that right there, you have two massive upgrades for whomever is under center or out of shotgun for that team. And I love the fit reuniting with a coach who knows how to make the most out of a player. That's feels like it's always that's such a hard division though. Like that's just a division where you have to, be able to take a big licking and keep on ticking like every single time. So that's my only fear with him there. But I love the fit for sure. Give me your second one.
The second one is a little more interesting, but it really, with what you touched on with Matthew Stafford being able to go out and explore a trade, like that just doesn't seem like something the Rams, who are, at least in my estimation, are one of the smarter teams in the league with Les Snead and all he's done to be able to rebuild that defense on the fly and keep them competitive when, people thought they were going to go through a rebuild. Like, why would they get rid of Matthew Stafford, who still looks to be, one of the 8 to 10 best quarterbacks in the league? Maybe they think that someone's out there that really fits their system, and you look around and that would probably be Sam Darnold. So obviously Sam Darnold was with San Francisco in 2023. Kyle Shanahan, head coach, who obviously Sean McVay used to work with and for. Then he goes to Kevin O'Connell, who used to work under Sean McVay in LA, runs a lot of the same system, had a ton of success in 2024. Does LA think that they can potentially maybe get a little bit of a discount compared to what they're paying Matthew Stafford for Sam Darnold, while having familiarity with Darnold in that system? Maybe Sean and crew think they can get a little bit more out of Darnold. It's ironic considering the Rams really kind of knocked him out of the playoffs and sort of frustrated and broke him a little bit in that game. But maybe they think that they're able to build upon what he did in the 24 season. Maybe the franchise tag's a little too hefty a price for what Minnesota's looking to pay with JJ McCarthy, who we mentioned is waiting in the wings. So just like, if they're going to let Matthew Stafford sort of test the market, and maybe the Giants are a team that makes sense in a little bit of a win now mode, which could knock another one of these teams, 5 of the top 7 down. Maybe that second and third pick sort of come out of the quarterback needy teams, and then Sam Darnold it's a little too weird that they're letting Matthew Stafford like test the market. So I feel like they maybe have something that they've been working on.
Like, would you really let a guy like, especially, the agent could just say that without them making this. They don't have to like tell everyone, right? Like you could test them. You could say something. You could go, at the combine, half
they
of
can
the
do this
talks
privately. They don't
right.
have to tell. They don't have to tell us that this is going on. Like, I'm sure
Right.
stuff like this goes on much more often than we know. But
Half of the conversations at the combine are an agent being like, "Well, what do you think you'd pay for that?" Like, that's why it's the fact that we know.
Hypothetically, yes.
If I maybe were able to say possibly something, but no, I mean that's what's got my like my spidey senses up because of that. And for me, I actually hope that the Giants. To me, I'm going. If I'm the Giants, I'm staying put at number 3, and I'm taking the LSU tackle because my offensive line is something that I need to really address. Their defensive front is addressed. They've got that down. They need to figure out the offense, give Brian Dable a real shot. Now, Matthew Stafford, the thing I love the most about him is he's the guy who I created a metric for, like the down after being pressured. Matthew Stafford has the best passer rating, quarterback rating, whatever, however you want to measure him on the down after being pressured, because, as a Lion, that's all he did was see pressure. So he was able to very much withstand and withhold that. So I think that would be a better strategy for them. I don't think that they're in a position where, I'm not them. There's so many rumors that they love Shador Sanders. They don't care. They'll just take him, whatever. Great if that's what they want to do. But I don't know. I guess it depends on does Joe Shane and Brian Dable, do they think that they must get a quarterback and win the specific way now? Or do they have a little bit of a leash? That all goes into it. But if I were the Giants, I would do Matthew Stafford and take the offensive lineman from LSU, because there's not a lot of, this is a very light O-line class for every metric that I've ever seen on this. And that's where I focus a lot of my time. So that's what I would do if I were them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes a ton of sense. Selfishly, I would just love to see Malik Neighbors get a quarterback. Like, he looked so awesome, especially before he had the concussion earlier on in the season. Like, he looked incredible without having a quarterback. So if you can get him a Matthew Stafford, I don't think you'd have to give up the third pick in the draft to get Stafford. Selfishly, I would love to somehow see Travis Hunter be there, because I think then all of a sudden you have an explosive offense right away. Tyrone Tracy looked really good as a rookie last season at running back, and then you have the two receivers and the quarterback who can absolutely still just sling the ball, and then you just go from there, and you immediately upgrade your offense in so many different ways. Obviously, they do need help on offensive line at all, and that's or as well, and those are the things that are a little less fun maybe to talk about.
Less fun. Come on, those are super fun.
Travis Hunter, but yeah, I mean, they definitely need help along the front as well.
Well, speaking of Travis Hunter, I put my stake in the ground. That's my number one player in this draft. He's a really unique study, a case study where obviously a two-way player, but the size, like the metrics, he's very prototypey to me wide receiver. I know he's said more about corner. Maybe that has something to do with playing for Dion and the legacy. Who knows? But I think he'd make a great wide receiver. He'd probably get paid a little bit more too. Who knows? But I have him forecast, to me, if I look at wide receiver, his ceiling goes up even higher. So that's one of the rumors I think will happen at the combine, that he'll be more willing to play on offense. Who knows? But interestingly enough, I mean, that to me, he is a really special talent. Is he your number one player? To me, Abdul Carter second from Penn State, the edge rusher, and this is a good defensive line class, but Travis Hunter is just, obviously Heisman winner or something very special.
Yeah, I would agree with Hunter. How can you not? He just did everything at Colorado. He played 112 snaps a game. Tony Holzman Escarino, one of our researchers here at NFL Network, tweeted it out that he averaged more snaps per game than any other FBS player played in a single game the entire season. So it's no one did what he did every week once. And it's just these guys just don't come around very often. Not only that, but Dion would always say, he's a 4.0 student. He doesn't drink. He doesn't party. He's engaged to be married. He's very, very mature. So again, as you just go down and start checking all of those boxes, it's something that raises his floor, and you just think he's less likely to get caught up in some things, fame wise or off the field. He has done it all. He was the number one kid coming out of high school. He's got the pedigree. He's learned from, I don't think there's anyone maybe potentially outside of Nick Saban that you can learn more about the defensive back field from than Dion. Dion's done it all. It's just, I can't go in another way than just I don't see how this kid isn't at least a very, very good player.
I have him. So as of right now, with no, let's pretend nobody trades out of the first 5 slots, just because for the sake of creating a model, you have to do it. In 81% of my models, if no trades are made in the first 3 picks, he's 81%. He's gone by pick 3.
Yeah. I don't think there's any way he gets past pick 3 just with the way this draft, is unfolded, and maybe there's not the quarterback up there, so that doesn't like take away one of those picks for sure.
Hmm.
Like last year, we knew the quarterbacks were going 1, 2, 3, so it's like the best player available in the draft, like Marvin Harrison Jr., like son of a NFL or Hall of Fame wide receiver, like every box possible already checked. Like it was impossible essentially for him to go before 4 with 3
Right.
quarterbacks ahead of him just because of the positional value. So without that this year, like Hunter's going to go.
Yeah. Well, okay. So we're gonna go through and say the thing I did wrong in the like. You look through my mock. Everyone can look at it. NFL.com/Freeland. What did I get wrong, Bill?
I think the thing that you got, I don't want to say wrong, but I think the thing that I don't believe will end up playing out is I think the defensive tackles are a little low. With Mason Graham at 11 to San Francisco, Walter Nolan at 23 to Green Bay, and Kenneth Grant at 30 to Buffalo. I think with the way the league continues to evolve, it's sort of gone back to teams aren't blitzing as much. We're playing a lot of shell coverage. We're trying to limit explosive plays. So if we're only going to rush 4, we need some big guys up there who are not only going to rush the passer and are able to create pressure, but that can also stop the run. So I think those guys are going to go a little earlier. I think even defensive tackle becomes a little more of a premium position. Obviously, edge rusher is always up there, but I think defensive tackle becomes a little more premium. I think especially Mason Graham, like I can't see him out of the top 10. Like he's just been all everything his entire career at Michigan. He won a national championship. He's done all the stuff. Like I just think he goes in the top 10.
I heard from a lot of Michigan fans when it first came out, so I think they would agree with you. And the funny part is that I've never had this many defensive tackles that are so the substitute value is very
Yeah.
interesting because it's like who's going to be strategically different or better. Well, they don't have as much variance, so they're not as much stylistically driven as others, which is why it at least this could be a flaw of how I model it out for and something to learn from that because my model really likes them, but the difference between 1 and 2 and 3 and whatever aren't as great as at other positions. That's the only reason why he
For
kind of
sure.
gets.
When you do the exercise this year with so many good defensive tackles, the offensive tackle that you can take in the top 10 and the defensive tackle that you take in the third round ends up with a higher expected value than the defensive tackle in the top because the offensive tackle that would be there in the third round is so different from the defensive tackle
Exactly.
that would be there.
Substitute
So that
value.
it makes a lot of sense. I just believe that the true blue chip
100%.
players, and I think Graham has the potential to be a true blue chip player, one of the top defensive tackles in the entire league. Like those guys are still going to go super early. Where you
Yeah.
get a little later than that, like I completely agree and think we'll see some of this. I just think we'll see the top 2 or 3 guys go, and then the other guys end up getting pushed down a little bit.
Well, in fairness, he's 11 and 23 is the second one. So I have
Yeah,
Mason Graham as the highest value one. So, I mean, it's just the
there you go.
substitute value is so interesting just because the scarcity at offensive line is so great this season. And so many teams have not great O lines. So that's really, again, this is a thought exercise. It's just done differently. It's not about
Well,
rumors or it's about just expected value. So
yeah, well, if
it's,
you have all these great defensive linemen coming out, like someone's got to block them.
that's
Because if
right.
you don't have an offensive line with all these new good defensive linemen coming in, like you're in even more trouble. So it makes sense.
All right. What's your favorite pairing that I've made in this mock 1.0?
I think my favorite pairing, we're just going to stick with the Michigan theme. So hopefully we get some of those
Go
Michigan
blue.
fans out of your mentions. But I think Colston Loveland, the tight end, to the Broncos at 20 just makes a ton of sense. Sean Payton turned Denver around quicker than I think a lot of people, including myself, thought they would. Like the
Including him,
playoffs in
probably.
playoffs in year 2. They came a really, really long way last year. Obviously, the defense was sort of their calling card with Surtain winning Defensive Player of the Year, which I personally love to see. I don't think it always has to be just someone who gets the most sacks on a good team, like someone who shows a lot of value in the secondary by not even getting targeted because the guy he's covering is an open is very valuable as you well know. So I just think with Bo Nix and what they want to do, Sean Payton likes the quick, short passing game. He wants to get the ball out quick. Having a tight end there helps immensely. Nick's growing with Loveland for the next few years makes a lot of sense. A lot of that chemistry between a tight end and a quarterback can develop, as those guys are a lot of safety valves. They're trying to find the hole in zone coverage, just get open, maybe, as opposed to, running specific timing routes and things like that. It's just like, hey, go turn around, find the hole in the zone and get open. And just like having those guys create a chemistry coming in, one year apart from one another, I think makes a lot of sense. Loveland, someone who Peyton can move all around the chessboard, and you well know that he loves to be creative and scheme things open. I think that's a really cool chess piece that he would be fortunate and would love to utilize.
If somehow he ended up there, that's like your dynasty fantasy pick. Like you pick him in the very last round and then you keep him for the next one, because to me that's going to be like a Sean Payton special right there. Okay, one last one for. Thank you so much for your time. It means the world to me. You know that you are the freaking best. I want to know what your biggest prediction is for the next couple of weeks. So between the combine, free agency, it could be a trade, it could be where someone signs, it could be any of the following or any of the things above that will shape kind of the rest of the off season. What is your prediction for that?
So I'll give sort of the homer answer to this, and then I'll give, like, if that doesn't happen. So I grew up in Kentucky. I grew up just south of the Ohio River. Bengals fan. I think they have sort of had the wake up call late on in the season when Joe Burrow basically said, like, sign T. Higgins. So I think they're going to figure out a way to potentially franchise him again, potentially sign him to a longer term deal. I just don't think they're going to let T. Higgins out of the building. And then with that, I think they're going to get the Jamar Chase deal finally done, and have those three guys again going into this season. And I think maybe the biggest reason for that is when you go down and see what T. Higgins would hit if he hit the open market. Like, he's not Justin Jefferson, but like he might get Justin Jefferson money, because guys like him, he's a number one receiver in the league. He's absolutely one of the best 32 wide receivers. There's no question about it. He's still young, coming off his first contract. Like, he's going to get a lot of money. The cap going up more than people thought it would gives these teams even more cash to play with. I think he might get close to the Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb average annual value if he hits the market. And I think the Bengals will realize this and utilize that little extra cap space that they're going to get with this to keep him. I just think they need to. The last thing they want to do is anger Joe Burrow at this point of his career.
It's interesting too that the strategy now, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins have the same agent, which sometimes can be it's an interesting strategy. You don't often see that, so I'm curious if, and it's Rocky, right? It's Ezekiel Elliott's agent. It's Marshall's, yeah, Marshall's agent. So it's just an interesting move. I actually think, I think that is more of a way to get things done. It sort of bridges some of the gap, because Jamar Chase playing this year without a deal and being your Triple Crown winner, like, that doesn't happen if there's not a lot of trust, if he clearly wants to play with Joe Burrow. So, and T is like there, I don't know. So I'm with you. I think that however they do it. Now, the question is that going to be good enough to overcome some of the deficiencies on the defense, because they need to spend some money there. I just don't think they can draft their way out of but maybe they can. Joe Burrow he was playing at crazy level last year, so it's going to be a strategy.
They definitely got to re-up Trey Hendrickson. But, I mean, we just saw Philadelphia. Like, Philadelphia signed Jalen Hurts. They signed A.J. Brown. They signed Devontae Smith. And, like, they were able to do it. And they just won the Super Bowl with the defense, with all of that. Now, look, the Bengals are not operated in the same way as the Eagles are, with just, you've seen, of paying people early for Philadelphia has helped them tremendously. And Cincinnati has just not done that. Like, take the quarterback market. Whatever that was 2 seasons ago, Jalen Hurts got paid first, and Joe Burrow ended up getting paid last. He got paid after Lamar Jackson and after Justin Herbert. So he got paid more, and the Eagles were able to get a little bit of a discount on Jalen Hurts because of it. So they've sort of put themselves in this situation by not signing people as early as possible, especially with these, like, home run blue chip players. So I kind of hope they can do it. And if not, I think T. Higgins is going to get just like the amount of money where people are going to be like, whoa, like T. Higgins got that. And it's like, yeah, like he's in his mid-20s hit unrestricted free agency. Like that just doesn't happen at this position, or really most positions.
Well, and this is not a great, I mean, it's a fine wide receiver class. I have 5 going in my first round draft, mock draft here, but this is not the same to me. The depth at the receiver position, again, for this draft class isn't as high as the ones we've seen in recent history. So, I mean, that's another reason that will drive the price for T up. And obviously the cap going up to like what, 280, something right around there was where it's going to land. That's bananas. So that's going to make an interesting free agency period. I appreciate you so much. You are the best. I said it before you came on, but you are the secret weapon behind not just NFL Network, but also Fox. And literally every time you see that green next gen stat thing come across in a game, pregame, postgame, anywhere, that's Bill and Bill's team. So you can thank him for that.
I have a very good team. I have a very good team.
And Bill's also awesome. You can take it from me. He's never going to say that he is, but he is the best. Thank you for your time. You are amazing. I appreciate you. And I'll see you in Indy.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Another huge thanks to Bill Smith for hanging out with us and making us all so much smarter. This week's going to be a special week. I'm going to add a whole bunch more information here on my socials, anywhere I can, basically, to help us add context to what we see at the Combine. I love the Combine. It is legitimately the best week if you are an avid football fan. So I'm going to share as many notes and nuggets as I can with all of you. Thank you, as always, for hanging out. And if you like the show, please like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and pass it along so we can continue to grow.